right, welcome back to the Culture Base. I'm Dustin, he's Blake, and we should be really on top of things because we just recorded, quote unquote, recorded for about 10 minutes, but we weren't really recording. So we've got a little practice already for today.
I feel like I've seen into the future on this one.
Yeah, a little bit. But we're excited to be with you regardless. You know, sometimes you just need some practice runs, and sometimes your brain tells you that without actually telling you that until you look down and realize there's no red light on. It's cool. So we're back today with you. It's January 16th, 2024. Today we're going to talk about a really cool exercise about how you can rehire your team. Before we get into that, I want to remind you that we're here to help leaders know what they're about, show where they're going, and build scalable teams to get them there. If you're listening to this on any audio podcast platform, thanks for listening. We would encourage you to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It really helps us get this content out further. If you're watching on YouTube, hello there. We're so glad that you're here. I won't mention that Blake ran chapstick over his lips several times in the last couple of minutes, but you can see it if you're there, and you can also see the finger gesture he just gave me on YouTube. No spoilers. You got to go there to watch it. So like, subscribe, ring that bell so you'll know every time we drop new content, including Blake's lips and his gestures. Okay. Also, this past week, we dropped a video a day on our YouTube and our Instagram for he's going to have a hard time getting over that one.
So lips and gestures. That's not good.
Lips and gestures. I mean, you got to go to YouTube to find out what we're talking about. Let's get those numbers up. Anyway, speaking of Instagram, last week we dropped a little short on our YouTube and our Instagram every day, kind of breaking down the subject that we talked about last week on the podcast, which is how you can develop your own culture values and write those for yourself and your organization. And we just dropped some videos about how we did that. So if you missed any of those, go check out our Instagram or our YouTube. You can find us there, LinkedIn or Facebook at The Culture Base, BASE. Or you can find out more about us at theculturebase.com. While you're there, you can click on the strategy session button, get a free 30-minute strategy session with us to talk about and strategize anything that we're talking about in any of these 27 episodes that we've released so far. We would love to chat with you about how you can scale your team. I think that's everything.
Cool.
It should be everything. Second time I've had to say it in the last 5 minutes. So, all right. So on to today's episode, rehire your team. Blake, you've got the right team on board. Everything seems to be clicking. The temptation here is to turn on cruise control and just let it ride. You know what I mean? Just keep hitting those snake eyes. Just let it ride. The danger, though, is not having this A team of yours tethered to the original mission. And thus, slowly over time, they veer off course, leaving you in a confusing and surprising pile of wreckage. What just happened? So it's time to rehire your team. So we're going to get into that, what that exercise is today. Blake, why don't you break down for us briefly, what does it mean to rehire your team?
Yeah, so what it isn't is it doesn't mean you just get to reset all their benefits, reset their pay. It doesn't mean you get to bring them back to, yeah, I know. Everyone was like, oh, yeah. Okay, let's make this a really short
tenure you've been building up. It's out of here.
Yeah. Sorry, we have a process where we reset everything. And
I don't even know you anymore.
It's not that. This is about making sure that your team is still who they have been in the past or that they've developed in the process of their time, right? That they've been there, that they still stand for the things that really mattered to you when you hired. Like Dustin was saying, it's so easy to get on cruise control and just completely assume, okay? We are, especially when you are busy and you are trying to grow something, it's so easy to forget and to just assume things are the way that you think they are. And I bet everything's great. And the truth is, like, you have to keep checking in. You have to keep establishing these things. And that's where, you know, it's like, yes, when I got married, I told my wife, I love you. And if that was it, like I didn't do that anymore, she would be curious, and then she'd be like, "I'm leaving you." And I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I said I love you back there 16 years ago when we got married. Why this is out of nowhere."
It all
And
goes back to 4
funny.
Christmases. I
Oh,
fed her, I put a roof over her head, and I never lied to her face. I
oh.
spoiled her.
But this is like we think this way as leaders and business owners and managers, that I told them once I had this connection. They knew what they was expected of them. We are humans. Like we don't retain, right? Like we don't remember everything. And when we're not held accountable, we don't tend to thrive. And
Mm,
so this is am I checking on the team constantly as part of my process every 2 to 3 years or so to just go through and rehire my team. So this is just an exercise. It doesn't mean that you're actually like you're on the brink of leaving. No. Like, first off, everyone's replaceable. So that's anytime that's the case. What this is just taking focused attention and going through this at a higher level. What is this going to benefit you? Probably more than you think. I know this is something you're going to be like, I don't really have time to do this. I know nobody has time to do it, but I'll tell you what you don't have time to do, and that's to rehire somebody else, train them up, go through the whole process of developing them to get back to whatever standard this person's at, especially if all that's happened is in that 2 to 3 years is you realize you haven't been present and you need to help starting to realign what's going on. Okay. So yeah, I think really this is it's got to be a belief that a bad apple can spoil the bunch. And if that's true, part of this is really doing a lot of culture control. Okay. It's going through, it's identifying, man, my team right now feels edgy. And any business owner, any leader knows what I mean when I say something just feels off. It feels edgy about my team right now. Responses I'm getting in email, responses I'm getting when I'm talking to people feel curt. They feel there's something off, and I need to see what's going on. This is a great time to go through and just rehire your people. So go through and just put thought to it. And I know, like, I think a lot of people just have struggle with putting thought to things like this because they feel like the work should have already been done. And like I already evaluated them. They should already be good. Thought thought time, thinking time, it is one of the most valuable things that
mm,
high level leaders can do. It's use that brain of theirs at a level that is not just being about fast production or busyness. Yeah, I don't remember. I think it was actually John Acuff. No, who's the one who wrote the Art of War? Not war. No, the War of Art.
we're Stephen Pressfield.
Yes, I think he's the one who said, "When I get busy, I get dumb," and
Mhm.
I could not agree more. And so I think that this thought process and thinking through things. I mean, Blaise Pascal says that all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to just sit quietly in a room. Okay. Like there's power to these thoughts. And when you can take that thought and you say, I'm going to give myself a 30-minute thinking time tomorrow to go through and evaluate as many people as I've got, but to evaluate them at a different level as if I was hiring them for the first time. Okay. So this just becomes a real valuable thought project. Um, yeah. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I was literally just adding 30-minute thinking time to my schedule because I forgot to put it in for this week. And it's awesome. Yeah, Blink's really good at that. He's really inspired me over the years to set aside some vision time just to think because we go, 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 and we do not take time enough to think. And y'all have heard me before on this platform and other platforms. I'm a huge advocate for mental health. This is a big reason why we struggle with mental health so rapidly or rampantly, I should say, in modern times. It's because we don't take time to think about what we're thinking about.
Mm, yep.
And it sounds kind of like an inception type of thing, right? Where I'm gonna think about the thoughts that I'm thinking about, and just like these layers just go deep. But there's wisdom in that. There's life in that, and you're able to kind of remove some of these things. And so part of I think remembering uh, like Blake said it, like kind of forget things all the time. Like we're forgetful people. Like we have a hard time retaining information. And if you know me, I'm super practical when it comes to remembering things and setting reminders for yourself. Like I just won't, other than like I know one phone number besides mine, and it's my wife's.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Other than like my immediate family's birthdays, like I don't really remember a lot of them. I
Nope.
don't know people's addresses. I don't know, and it's not because I'm getting old and I just turned 40. Pause for a moment of silence. There it is. Like shocked face. God, thanks, Blake. That was terrible. No, I'm good. I appreciate never seeing that face again, especially when it's about me. But set some reminders for yourself. There comes the chapstick. Ooh, that's really far out. Like a magic wand coming out. Set some reminders for yourself. I'm sorry, y'all. Set some reminders for yourself, whether it's on your phone. Hey, I want to schedule an email to come to myself a year from now, or whatever it is, your PMS system that you use, whatever task system that you use, whatever it is, something that will go off and remind you, like we said at the top, kind of every 2 to 3 years. This isn't necessarily an annual exercise because you'll exhaust not only yourself, but your team as well if they're constantly having to be rehired all the time. But this exercise is one that's so important that you want any of these topics that we're talking about are important, but you really want to set these things like, I want to do this. So many leaders that I work with on a weekly basis have so many wants and desires, but very little of them put the infrastructure in place to actually make it happen. Yep. And it could just be as simple as setting a reminder for yourself, speaking into your phone, say, remind me 3 years from now to rehire my team.
Yep.
And hopefully future you remembers what that means. And if not, maybe put a little note in there about what it means to rehire your team. That's my rant, as you were.
No, that's good. And that's really where we come to, would I hire them again? Would I be just as excited about them today as I was about them in the past? Right. And I think it's important to play to whatever level you're at. Okay. And I say that because I'm about to start talking about a lot of like practical things to do in this process. But culture building, culture developing is all about ecological growth, right? It's about emergent growth. It's about the things you learn and the system which you're taking to get there. Meaning, you can't one day go, you know what? I think I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna plant a garden, and you plant a 10 by 10 garden and you work it and you're like, you know what? I am going to go into red gold tomato production. And all of a sudden I'm going to have 40, lead managers and 100. That doesn't make sense. There are so many things you missed out in that growth process because you're not just doing a little. A little goes a long way in culture. Okay. So any step you take here is going to be valuable, which means even you could just start by saying, okay, well, everything you're about to talk about seems like a lot to me right now. I don't even know that I have the right leadership in place to go through these things. Then what I would tell you is just do a gut check exercise and sit down, write a list of all of your teammates and go out and say, yes, I would rehire them. No, I wouldn't rehire them. I might rehire them. I'm not sure. I'm kind of in the middle. That's fine. That is a good step.
I was just going to say, maybe don't physically walk around the floor with a clipboard and do this. You know what I mean? Can you imagine?
What's a bean mean?
Every 2 to 3 years, they see you kind of walking around, rubbing your chin with a clipboard, going, I don't know about Bill. Maybe just mind dump this in the privacy of your office or the leadership conference room or something. I want to throw that disclaimer out there. Don't want any leaders to be undercut by their team and have a little rally on their hands. All right. Warning over. Go ahead.
No, very, very good point. But I would just say, do what you can do. Okay. Get into that practice and that mentality that I'm going to take steps and take actions little by little, because the more little by little I do, the bigger this thing gets.
Yeah.
Where we are today at Ridgeline, my company, we were not there 4 years ago. We weren't there 3 years ago. It is a constant like growth, ecological growth that we get, and we keep getting better, and we keep throwing out questions and evaluating and changing. And so you really need to do it at your own pace. Okay. But I do, I think that we're all just like a thought, feeling, and action away from moving the needle on the result that we want. And so if you can take that step, if you can take that change of thought and have the right feeling that pushes you to the action, you're going to see great results. So having said all of that, let's just kind of jump into the things. Okay. So that's the big picture. Why the things to this are, first off, how did you go through the hiring process? You sat down, you kind of had an interview with them. You don't necessarily have to have an interview. You can. Okay. You can bring them in. You can make this their annual review. Is that maybe every third annual review you go through and you ask questions. Hey, I'm going to ask this question now. What are your thoughts about it? Because now they've been away from that process for a while and they don't remember what they said. Promise they don't. I don't remember what I said in those things. So getting a more up-to-date feedback on that is great, because they've either evaluated and evolved, or they've got jaded. And so both of those things are great things to know and to figure out based off their responses to those questions. So then as you're going through that, some of this stuff is going to need to be done with your leadership team too. Okay. So going through the people analyzer, we've talked about that in the past, where like in your hiring process, you've got your core values listed out. You've got your, they get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it kind of questions. They've got the, what else? Oh, they like tension to overcome is a big one that we look for. We're usually just grading them where we feel like they are based off the responses we've got to their questions. The benefit is you actually now have data on this person. You don't just have to guess based off questions you're asking in an interview. You're now getting the benefit of, I've had time knowing this person. I know where I think their tension to overcome is at.
Yeah. I got a question here, because you got a couple things on our notes here on this people analyzer section about tension to overcome level and entitlement to gratitude balance level, which I know you're going to talk about here in a second. With these levels and within the people analyzer, this is just me because I think very practically, and I want to know, is this like a 1 to 10 scale? Is this a 1 out of 100? Is it like a green, yellow, red situation? Like, how do you guys do it at your company? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I'll tell my company on this, but I would say whatever works best for you is the right answer.
There you go.
And I'll tell you that we don't even just have one way of doing it. We have multiple ways of doing it here. So like our core values, we do, as we go through the core values, is a we, not me. We're passionate life leaders. We build trust through candor. We're going through each of these and I'm looking at it. We evaluate based on a plus, minus, and minus. So for that stuff, that's all I'm doing is, hey, they're a plus here, they're a plus minus, because we have a standard that we want to stand by in our company. And everyone could be like, well, you got to be pluses on everything. No, that's not realistic. And even your top leaders aren't pluses on everything, because life's about progress and growth. It's not about perfection. And so I think coming to realistic standards of what you want to see people at and having that, and then saying, I think on we, not me, they're probably a plus minus. On, building trust through candor, they're definitely a plus, and you're kind of going through there. Same thing on the get it, want it, and capacity to do it. They want to be in this role. They understand what this role is about. They have the wherewithal, like even cognitively, to excel in this position. I'll still probably be plus, minus on those. When we get to the tension and overcome level, and then the entitlement to gratitude. So to me, that was just one of the other things that we would see is we'd have gals that hit really well in some of these areas, but then we saw that they were incredibly entitled, which was not part of our culture. And it was so much that, like, it's not our core value necessarily, but it's kind of like a permission to play that we needed to highlight quicker and better in our process. So on those, This is where I get nerdy. It's you. I would basically, if I did not want to explain this whole process, I would just say, yeah, 1 to 10. Okay. But we do a thing called the Fibonacci sequence, which is, yeah, hello. It is basically
How much you
like,
talk
it's
about
hard
this?
for me to say someone is the difference between a 5 and a 6, right? Like, tell me a level task and a 6 level task. It's so arbitrary, it's hard to do. What
Mhm.
the Fibonacci sequence is, it's just a bunch of numbers. Okay. It's 1, 2, 1 plus 2 equals 3, 2 plus 3 equals 5, 5 plus 3 equals 8. It's just the last two numbers added together to make the next number. What that does for us is helps us get to a better way of differentiating really great and not so great, and then not terribly rewarding the middle.
Mm.
So
I,
it's an estimating way of doing things.
I think the main thing there, and I'm half joking, but I'm also pretty serious, is that you understand it.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I
Exactly.
mean? I'm sitting here
Yeah.
listening to this going like, you lost me when you went from 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Like I know what you're doing, but
Yep.
as long as you know what you're doing, it's honest. Like I said, I say it
100%.
half joking, but also half serious. Like as long as not only you get it, but the person that you're leading through it understands. Like you can't constantly be changing your evaluation scale systems. And expect your team to constantly be hitting the marks that you want them to be because they don't know what they're being measured up against. And if
Yep.
they can't understand the measuring tape,
Yeah.
then they're not going to know if they're winning or not.
Yep.
And then
Absolutely.
you're not going to know
Mhm.
if they're worth rehiring or not
Right.
because you've just kind of taken the whole system, you just kind of shook it up, and it's
Yep.
the I forgot the guy's name, essentialism McGowan, or what's his last name? Essentialism.
Mm.
Essentialism says is just like what you're saying, more about what you're saying yes to than, or more about what you're saying no to than you're saying yes to.
Mm.
And it's just like this stuff right here. Like, let's
Mm.
simplify the process as much as you can.
Sure.
But as long as you and the team member both 100% can spout it back and forth to each other,
Yep.
you could talk in like Star Trek-y language if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. What do they call
Yeah.
that? Willy Walk or Walkie Wig, or I don't know. I'm not a Star Trek person.
That's fair.
There's like a whole language that Star Trek people have. You know what I'm talking about. Don't look at me
No,
like that.
I
Okay.
don't know
But
what
it is real. Ask
you
Grant. He'll know.
I
Anyway,
don't
moving
know.
on.
Gosh.
It's
So,
a, all right, you go ahead.
anyway, very true. Whatever works for you and your team, right? Like, your leadership team has got to understand by which standards they're gauging this off of. Cognitive assessments, I think, are great. Cognitive and personality assessments. Okay. So, like, Enneagram, whatever you've used in the past, maybe even switch it up occasionally. Every 3 years, do a different thing to get a better picture. We will stay with the Burke assessment because I like that it gives cognitive and personality traits. However, and I can get disc analysis based off that. But I think really you've got to figure out what works for you, like Dustin was saying, and allow yourself the freedom to jump around to get better pictures. What were you going to say there?
I was just gonna say that I found what it is. It's Klingon.
Oh yeah, glad we
Klingon.
glad we stopped for that one. That
I just
was
want to make sure because I know they're like Star Wars people. They're everywhere, and there's going to be people that are listening to this going, "God, it's Klingon!"
yeah.
Like, just
And
driving.
the
I've
fact
been
that
in
you
there.
just compared them to Star Wars people is going to piss them
It
off.
will 100% piss them off, but I'm neither. I don't do any stars. I don't the wars or the treks. I'm not into it. But hey, it's for people like whatever. To each his
Some
own.
people are ambi stars. I get it. Little ambi stars.
Ambi stars.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to drop in here real quick, like what the Kling. So within the fictional universe of Star Trek, Klingon is derived from the original language spoken by the messianic figure Khalis, if I said it right. Moving
Mm,
on.
that's good. Well, glad
That's
we
an
could.
assessment. Maybe Klingon part of your assessment. That's what I'm getting at here. It doesn't matter what language it is, as long as you're all speaking it. I'm tying it back, Blake. This is me tying it back.
All right. Yeah.
I'm
So if
all for real.
anybody
I'm
needed
gonna
a
mute
time.
myself. Go ahead.
All right. Anyway, then another aspect that we'll do occasionally is doing SWOT analysis. Yes, everyone, I'm sure, in the business development world knows SWOT: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay. All those first letters, the acronym is SWOT. we usually do this with vision or direction or where our company's going in the next year to 3 years. However, I think it's one of the biggest misses that we don't do SWOT with people, because we're legitimately asking and trying to figure out people's strengths. We're trying to understand their weaknesses. What a great opportunity to use a SWOT analysis to look at the opportunities this person's already showing in the next 2 years, 3 years. Hey, this person has a really good, like, as you're coaching, being able to capture, hey, this person has a really good understanding of estimating. I can already tell that they're thinking about labor on a different level. And then so you're writing those things down. And then threats. What are the threats of this person? Are they a bad apple? Like, just getting down to the brass tacks of it. Are they a bad apple that needs to be gone? And you're trying to identify the threats that this person could cause the organization, the threats that the, not necessarily the world, but just like common day policy could add to this person's role at our company. And so you're doing a full analysis here on that person. Then just even in your coaching calls, if you're doing coaching calls, if you're not doing coaching calls, here's another call to coaching calls. This is a time for reviewing your past coaching calls. If you're writing things down, if you're taking notes, getting good data, man, we thrive on data. Data is so important in traction and EOS. If you guys follow that stuff, that's one of the key points is data, being able to have data that actually moves something. In your team, having data that points out when people are operating and doing things, because we forget the great things people do. We tend to remember the things that like they didn't do well at, but like, man, just hitting an understanding that they are doing the things you need them to do. And I have the data and the stories to kind of hit on that. You have anything with that?
Nah, coaching calls are important.
Yeah, I see that.
I like the little breaking news ticker at the bottom. Sometimes it's fun to play with. Sorry, I'm off the rails today, y'all. No, I think all of these things are good. All of these tools in the tool bag are things that you should have at your disposal. I would say maybe if this is a new concept for you to rehire your team, maybe practice on each other in your leadership team before you start bringing in your team to kind of start implementing this, because I don't know. I'm just a believer in kind of beta testing and proofing concepts before we start rolling big things out. Because you listen to these podcasts and these things like this watch these things on YouTube, and you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. That's what we need. That's the missing element. We need to rehire our team, and then you just go without really kind of developing it and what that uniqueness might look like for you and your team, and what the logistics of that strategy are, and what the rollout of that, what the distribution, like we say often, and what that looks like. And then you just kind of you do the opposite effect, and you just cause mass confusion. Yeah. Which is not the type of culture that you're after here. So yeah, I would just say beta test this on a leadership team. If you don't have a leadership team, if it's just you at the top, number one, that's a warning. Maybe kind of bring somebody else in. Number two, that maybe it's a coach, a mentor, another person who's in your shoes equally at another company that you might be friends with. Just go, hey man, can you give me an hour to beta test this off of you, and you tell me kind of what gaps, what's confusing, what seems off, anything like that. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. So, and thanks. That was super helpful, because one of the aspects that we'll do with this is we don't straight call it rehiring. Like, that is red flags all around, because it seems
maybe like not.
That's like behind the scenes.
It's insider lingo.
Your team doesn't even need to know you're doing it.
Nah.
Okay. This is a thought exercise. Would you rehire them is the big answer, or a big question that you're looking for the answer. And so
that's good.
All of this is really about, that's why I say, like, try to put it in places that you're already doing something. Put certain aspects in the coaching call, put things at the yearly review. You're doing this thing constantly too, right? And then when you sit down and you try to compile data, that's when you're saying, you know what, here's an area I'm unsure about. Okay, in my next coaching call, I'm going to write down that this is an area I want to challenge them on and see how they respond to it. Like, hey, I don't really feel like they're a we, not me. And I'm going to just ask the question. And if I'm going to go, and you don't go, hey, you being we, not me? Like, you don't do that, but you ask questions about practical things happening. They go like, hey, I saw that so-and-so didn't show up on time and that this was your response. And just like, tell me about that. Tell me about what happened there. And what you're doing is you're looking for, are they sold? Are they not? So like, well, I just don't care. If they show up, they show up. If they don't, they don't. Well, no, that's not the way we run our jobs. Like we're hoping that you're the one running this. Like we're putting a lot of trust in you here. And this is okay. Now I know an area I need to coach, pay attention to, keep accountable. And then if there's not correction and this is a big issue, okay, not just like they're not doing what you want, that's not good enough. If it's a big issue that you would be like, this is a cultural thing. This is a standards thing. This is going to ruin other people if I keep it, then you get rid of it or you reward it. Like that's the balance here is we want to reward good stuff and we want to discipline the bad stuff. Like that's parenting 101, right? Like, so how do we do that? So
celebrate what you want repeated.
Exactly.
Yeah, celebrate what you want repeated. Yeah, I just want to remind people, like, this is a one thing that Blake said in there. I just want to highlight real quick. This is a thought process. This exercise is a thought exercise. This is not a roll out to your team that every 3 years they're going to have to reprove themselves. To you and the team. This is just a thought exercise. So don't be mistaken that you're going to go out and broadcast this terminology per se. It's just a thought exercise. But my bigger reminder is because we're 27 episodes into this thing, Blake, and we've been talking about a lot of different concepts and a lot of different ways to build the culture and to scale your team. I just want to remind people that building scalable teams through this cultivating the right culture is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah,
this stuff takes time, and you're going to see yourself start to unpack some of these things and roll out some of these things, and 6 to 12 months are going to go by and you're going to be like incremental changes. I don't think you're giving it long enough, because especially if it's a culture that's been around, the longer your culture has existed the way it is, the longer it's going to take to turn that ship. So if you're brand new, we're just turning a little sailboat. But if you're a huge company or even a medium-sized company that's been around for 20 plus years, you're turning the Titanic. And that's going to take time. You can't just whip it around because the wind changed directions. Like, it's going to take a minute to really turn that thing around. So I just want to encourage and remind the leaders as they're listening to this that it's a marathon, not a sprint. I know you know that already. I'm not saying anything that you don't already know, but it's just a reminder to you to keep pressing on, keep doing the right things. Even if you don't see the massive results that you think you should be experiencing, it's going to come out in the little comments and the little pieces of feedback and the little pieces of retention kind of going up and to the right. You're going to start to see those things over time. Just trust the process, keep moving forward, do the right thing. We believe in you. That's all I want to say. Thumbs up from Blake. All right, cool. So want to remind everybody before we finish up this episode, you can go to theculturebase.com, click on the strategy button there. We would love to set a time to have a 30-minute call with you and just unpack any of these things that we've been talking about in today's episode or a previous episode. We did mention a while back about this really cool turnover calculator that is getting very, very close to being done and ready for y'all. Cannot wait to share that with you. It's super cool. Next week, we're going to be back, episode 28, January 23rd. Is that what that date is? Yeah, after the 16th, plus 7. No. Yes, plus 7, 23. January 23rd, we'll be back for episode 28. We're talking about passion for the work. It's really high right now in January. How's it going to look in March, April, May, June, July? See how I kind of just trickled it down there? That's my running out of battery voice.
Was that Klingon?
That was not Klingon. I think Klingon is almost like what's the big fuzzy furry guy? I'm going to make people mad. Chewie.
Dude, he did not go here.
I think it's like Chewie.
You're stepping in places you shouldn't be stepping.
That's 100% truth, but I can because my microphone's turned on. So, And you're still listening. Thank you. Anyway, no, it's not Klingon. It's like Chewbacca, I think is what Klingon might sound like I'm not even going to try it. You know what? If you watch Star Trek or Star Wars, we're so glad that you're here. Write into us and tell us all the ways that we're wrong. And I will read those comments on the air. Promise you. Promise you I will. It's been a great episode. I'm sorry that I've been a little wacky. I'm drinking a lot of water. I'm very hydrated. I've had to go to the bathroom now since we started recording. So, we'll be back next week. Passion for the work. It's going to be great. And it'll be our last one of January. We'll finish it off well. We'll talk to you next time on Culture Base Podcast. Later.